Honourable Vice President of the European Parliament, Commissioner Albuquerque, honourable members of the European Parliament, Madame Rapporteur, all of you, good afternoon, and it's an absolute pleasure to be back here in the European Parliament to discuss your draft resolution of the ECB annual report. At the ECB, we are deeply committed to a dialogue, and we are deeply committed to transparency and accountability. And in particular, we are very keen on how we communicate with the people of Europe that we consider very highly and that we treat very seriously in their aspirations. And we are also, obviously, because you are representatives of the European people, we are very keen to make sure that we communicate with all of you as much as possible. In fact, in the last parliamentary term, for those of you who were members of parliament in the last parliamentary term, we interacted with this parliament more frequently than in previous terms. The record shows. At the same time, it's not just about us being accountable to you, it's also the opportunity to hear your views, and through you, the views of European members and European people. Debate, your resolution are an important pillar of the ECB accountability framework and a key channel for you to share your views with us, and I can assure you that we listen and we pay great attention. For instance, next week will mark the 10th anniversary since the ECB started publishing the accounts of the Governing Council's monetary policy meeting, and that was a major step in order to enhance our monetary policy communication, and one that you, Parliament, had advocated 10 years ago. We have done that ever since, and we were followed through by other central banks around the world as a result. This year's draft resolution covers key issues that are central to the ECB's mandate and the future of the euro area, including our response to inflation, the digital euro, and the ECB's role in supporting the EU's broader economic policies. It also reflects the dynamic challenges we face in Europe today. And I look forward to hearing your thoughts on all of these issues and having a constructive dialogue with you. But before we do that, let me first outline our view about the current economic situation, explain what our monetary policy stance is, and also address the broader economic challenges we are facing and what implications they have for our monetary policy. When I look at the euro area economy today, I can attest that it grew, but it grew modestly in 2024. While output stagnated in the fourth quarter of 24, it was still last quarter of 23 compared with last quarter of 24 plus 0.9%. Surveys indicate that manufacturing continues to contract while services activity is expanding. Consumer confidence, you will hear more about that, is still fragile, and despite rising real incomes, households are hesitant to spend more. And yet the conditions for a recovery remain in place. A solid job market and higher incomes should strengthen consumer confidence and allow spending to rise, and consumption to be a driver of growth. More affordable credit should boost consumption and investment over time. Exports should also allow and support the recovery as global demand rises, although in that respect it's obviously conditional upon changes and developments that we will observe in international trade policies. Inflation stood at 2.5% in January and has recently developed broadly in line with staff projections. Core inflation, that is taking out energy and food, has remained at 2.7% in recent months, reflecting a sideways movement in both services and goods inflation. Wage growth is moderating as expected, although it remains elevated, while at the same time profits are partially buffering the impact of wage increases on inflation. Inflation is set to return to our 2% medium-term target in the course of 2025, this year, with risks on both the upside and the downside. It's clear that greater friction in global trade would make the euro area inflation outlook more uncertain. In total, the ECB has lowered interest rates by 125 basis points since last June, and the deposit facility rate, which is the rate through which we steer the monetary policy stance, now stands at 2.75%. 2.75%. At our last meeting in January, we decided to lower our key interest rates by another 25 basis points, based on an updated assessment of the inflation outlook, the underlying inflation and its dynamics, as well as the strength of monetary policy transmission. In particular, the disinflation process in the euro area is well on track. Most measures of underlying inflation suggest that inflation will settle at around our targets on a sustained basis. And while financing conditions continue to be tight, our recent interest rate cuts, 125 basis points, are gradually making borrowing less onerous for both corporates and households. We are determined to ensure that inflation stabilizes at our 2% medium-term target. We will follow a data-dependent and meeting-by-meeting approach to determining the appropriate monetary policy stance, and we are not pre-committing to any particular path. So let me now turn to the broader economic environment and its implication for monetary policy. Europe has faced, and you know that, an unprecedented challenges in recent years, a series of unprecedented challenges in recent years, each with its own far-reaching impact, and probably more far-reaching than we could all anticipate when they hit our radar screen. From the COVID-19 pandemic to surging energy prices,